Good afternoon and welcome to the Natural Resources, Agriculture and Open Spaces Subcommittee. I'm your chair, Regina T. Boyce, and we have a short schedule, but I'm hoping it to be thorough. I'm hopefully not here for an hour so that everyone can leave for the holiday weekend and enjoy the beautiful weather. Do we have... Oh, there's my friend Patrick. We're going to start with SB 32. We heard the cross-file to this bill, which was Delegate Morgan's bill, HB 120 about the microloan program. It was amended in the Senate on the floor. And Patrick, you want to go through it?
Patrick, you're on mute.
Apologize. I'll repeat, the rest of the bill, besides the Senate amendment, was in the same posture as the House bill as it passed the House.
Correct.
The Senate bill addressed the oyster shucking house loan program, where they're having problems getting loans out. They had their $1 million appropriation because most of the jobs are seasonal jobs. So the amendment addresses that and allows for a $10,000 credit for the seasonal shucking jobs.
Does anyone have any questions about the amendments or would like further explanation of the amendments? And because of those amendments added on, of course, the title of the bill changed. And then any of my Eastern Shore folks just want to check in.
Move the amendments.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the amendments? All in favor of the amendments to SB 32, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Well, we're not actually adopting any amendments. Let's clarify. We're not adopting any amendments.
We are suggesting amendments to go to a Senate bill. Or we are accepting this. We're voting for the Senate bill. You're right.
Yeah, so I do apologize. I would just say at some point, I have spoken to the sponsor. I'm sure it has not, I don't believe it's been moved yet. It's on second reader. Hopefully they'll amend it in the Senate. And if not, I'm sure it'll go to conference committee and we'll probably move to concur to the Senate.
To make things a little clearer here, the motion would be to move the bill.
Yes,
because it's a Senate bill with the amendments already in them.
Move the bill.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of SB 32, signify by saying aye.
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 Any objections? Any abstentions? Bill moves favorably. Let's go to SB 268.
Okay. Yeah, this is the enforcement bill for the Chesapeake and Atlantic coastal-based critical area. Kind of update some of their provisions from the 2008 bill, much less broad than the previous bill. It requires that you must pay all penalties for violations, for all violations before and after the fact variance can be granted. Strikes a 30-day waiting period for referral to the Attorney General for lack of local enforcement. It strikes references to administrative, civil, and criminal penalties to allow them to have consistency with local codes, which are all over the map on these things. And then allows the AG to bring enforcement action for all violations, not just for approved project plan violations. And we do have, I believe I saw Kate Charbonneau's on the call if you have any questions for the commission.
And I actually do. And thank you for that, Patrick. When I was reading the bill, it talked about that it on page 3, lines 27 through 32, they talk about I just had a question about if it says whenever the chair has reason to believe, and I may be getting too technical, but reason to believe will be based on current policies and procedures set for them to then move on, because reason to believe seems like very arbitrary, I just,
Well, just to be clear, first of all, that's current law.
I
But
understand.
second of all, all the chair does is refer it to the attorney general. That's it. The attorney
He
general makes the
may,
decision whether there's any charges.
right, says he may refer, and I guess, you said Kate was on? Oh, there she is.
Yes, I am. Thank you. Yes, so this would be in the event that we would be notified of a violation that's occurred in a local jurisdiction. We always reach out and seek information from that local jurisdiction about that violation. And there have been instances, unfortunately, where local action has not been taken and they are dragging their feet. In those cases, we prepare all the information that we can. We provide that information to the chair. Currently, the chair would have to serve notice to the local jurisdiction that they intend to refer the matter to the Office of the Attorney General and wait 30 days. So this amendment is simply striking that waiting period and allowing the chair to make that referral. But prior to all of that happening, staff has been in communication with the counties or the jurisdictions about those violations.
Okay, Delegate Tarasa, I think, had a question.
I'm good, Madam Chair.
Delegate Otto. You're on mute, Delegate Otto. Leslie, can we unmute him? Because it says he's on mute, but I don't hear him.
He should be unmuted. Oh, he just muted himself again.
Well, I was
There you go.
talking. I thought it was working, but it looks like it's taking local control away from the local governments that are closer to the people and have input into what's going on with the environment. And I don't particularly care for what Annapolis does.
It's very infrequent occasions it has been used. It means like the local jurisdiction has not issued a notice of violation. They have not cited that violation with any further enforcement action requiring cleanup. They haven't scheduled any hearings or further action with the courts. So all of those pieces remain in place. So the chair really only takes action if none of that is happening.
It sounds like a lot of authority in the chair's position.
Well, when it gets referred to the Office of the Attorney General, they, take it independently and they do their own research before moving forward with the case. But it would really only be generally, I do understand the concern. Our preference is to work with the local jurisdiction to provide guidance on, our staff frequently offers guidance on how to write a notice of violation. We want to get to restoration of the site. So we try and work with the locals and give them that information and feedback. But as you probably know, sometimes there are just actions that don't move forward and they may in fact be particularly egregious. And so that is why the authority that currently exists is there. And this change is simply to allow the chair to have a more timely response when it's necessary.
Kate, can you give Delegate Otto and I an example when local
Yeah.
authorities failed to enforce something that may have felt egregious at your level? That would be helpful.
Certainly, there was an instance in working with a local jurisdiction. This individual cleared, it was like 10 acres of forest. About 6 acres were within like non-tidal wetlands and critical area buffer. The county had been aware of what this individual was doing. Some of it they were working with on trying to restore, but they were really there was no official notice of violation ever formally issued, and there was no real clear path to sort of get to restoration of the property. It also included Maryland Department of the Environment because there were wetland violations. So that case, unfortunately, we were working on gathering the information, and then the gentleman in question, the property owner, passed away. So we didn't take that case any further, but it dragged on for a couple of years trying to work with the county on a process. And so, you know, we were taking that information and working on a referral.
Okay, Delegate Tarasa.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say, I think this provision's really, which looks like pre-existence, is really important, because this is just only when it comes to the chair's attention, essentially, that the local jurisdiction isn't enforcing. So for whatever it's worth, I think it's really important.
Okay. Any other questions or clarifications? Otto? Delegate Otto? Yes, sir, your hand's up. Go for it.
Who can present this to the chairman? Who's got the standing in the situation? Is it somebody, the next door neighbor, or that?
So
that, but or
right, and so you know, all of the authority really does lie with the local jurisdiction. So when our office is contacted about potential violations, our first point of contact is that local jurisdiction. They have the authority and the ability to go out and, you know, enter property to find out if a violation has occurred, and document, you know, what has occurred out there. And so we really rely on that information. You know, we're not just like scanning aerials and, you know, taking the word of neighbors, because, you know, conflicts that happen between neighbors, unfortunately, all the time. And so, but it is really in working with that local jurisdiction. But there are just times, unfortunately, where a violation doesn't proceed through the entire process. And so, you know, trying to get to restoration is our ultimate goal. And this is, you know, just allowing the chair to move forward a little bit more quickly when something is not moving forward.
And Kate, I want to clarify that more. So when it says local jurisdiction, what local jurisdictions are we talking about? We're talking about like a planning office, or what jurisdiction, office or department within a local jurisdiction?
Most, it would be within wherever the inspection and enforcement authority lies within that local jurisdiction. So it could be the planning director, or they might have a separate code enforcement officer, or a whole division that does, but it's within that county that has a local critical area program.
Right. Are there any other questions? Is there a desire to move this bill?
Madam Chair, I'll move it.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Oh. Is it discussion? Is there any hesitation? Do we need further discussion, or are we just tired? Okay. All in favor of SB 268 to move as favorable, signify by saying aye.
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 Any further discussion?
no.
No. Otto is no. Jacobs is no. Baker is no. Okay. Bill moves favorably. I just want to make sure I got my Jacobs, Otto, Baker. Okay. SB 299.
That one's mine. So SB 299 is updating the duties and authority of the Coast Smart Council.
It's requiring the Coast Smart Council to develop eligibility criteria, standards, and procedures for categorical exemptions, and authorizes the council to recommend regulations for adoption by the secretary. This is codifying a practice that this council currently uses for their categorical exemptions.
Are there any questions or clarifications regarding SB 2299?
Move favorable.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor of SB 299 signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposition? Bill moves favorably from the committee. SB 300. This was a strange one. Yeah, I think it's, yeah, that's Patrick.
Yeah, this is the bill that allows the historic barn restoration in Beltwoods Wildland in Prince George's County.
Okay. Yep.
Apparently, similar language that exists for two other wildlands.
Okay. I know I thought I saw Dylan on the call.
Yeah, I'm here.
You want to provide any more insight on this one?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just generally speaking, the wildland statute is really restrictive because the intent of those was to kind of keep lands completely untouched and left in a wild state. But at this particular wildland, we found these two structures and we want to rehabilitate them, but we just aren't, we do not have the statutory authority to do that. And there was one amendment, from the Senate side that just required us to collaborate with Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission, which we worked with them on that amendment and we support.
And is that already in SB 300?
That's already in the bill.
Okay, yeah, okay, that's fine. Okay. Yeah, I think I saw that.
I move the bill, Madam Chairman.
Well, thank you, Sir Otto. Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? And if I remember correct, there is no cross-file to this bill.
Correct.
That's correct. All in favor of SB 300 moving favorably signify by say aye.
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 Any opposition? Thank you. And I have just a general question, Dylan. In the future, if more of these type of situations happen where you have this wildland and all of a sudden you find some like archaeological wonder, you'd come in each separate time to ask for the permission specifically and not broadly. Thank you, sir.
Of course. Thank you, Madam Chair.
SB 301.
Okay, yeah, this is the bill that extends the sunset. A few years ago, we had an issue where areas where we had aquaculture had clean water, which was attracting the SAVs, which was upsetting the aquaculture operations where these people had put significant money into and invested money into. And technically, by the law, they're not allowed to harvest on that when the whole reason the SAVs are flourishing is because of their aquaculture. So we came to an agreement to allow DNR to deal with it on a case-by-case basis and to study it. And then we had a reporting requirement, which the Senate added on to that and is now in the bill. That is pretty much word for word what we added 5 years ago. So that's pretty much your bill.
So you just extended it to that 8 years into 2027?
Yeah, the previous law was 5 years. This pushes
Right.
it out 3 more years
Okay.
and continues the reporting requirement.
Thank you, sir. Any discussion on SB 301 and the sunset or the extension of the sunset provisions? All right. Is there desire to move the bill?
Move the bill.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the bill? Okay. All in favor of SB 301 moving favorably signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any objections?
No.
No, is that Delegate Otto? Are you just being mean? Or are you really saying no? All right. It moves favorably from the subcommittee. SB 303. This had to be my favorite bill to read this past weekend. It's the
Well-
alteration of the definition of shellfish.
Well, I'll leave it to the subcommittee to debate, but all the bill does is take out the definition of shellfish, live oysters, seed oysters, oyster shells, live hard shell, live soft shell clams, and substitutes from the, as came out of the Senate, live bivalve and bivalve shells.
Yep. Anyone have
Questions at the
questions
hearing?
about it? Because I'm ready. Because I got answers. Delegate Ziegler.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to hear what you and Delegate Jacobs have to say about this. I have a feeling this is one of those things that matters
Yeah.
more than it sounds like it does.
I know. So I read this. I was like, what an interesting little page and a half bill. Like, what are they talking about? So in reading, I learned that their shellfish are in two groups. One, crab, so on and so forth. The second are bivalves. Bivalves are clams, oysters, mussels, so on and so forth. And so I guess in this case, when we're talking about the type of shells, or you're talking about, excuse me, clam shells, soft shells, I mean, I think they're just trying to get at a, as they talk it, a two-part hinged shellfish. You're talking about a bivalve and not a crustacean. That is what I got. That's it. That's what I got. That's the history lesson, unless Jay Jacobs has something different.
Do you have thoughts about this bill, Delegate Jacobs?
I sure do.
Well, come on.
Would you help the
The
rest
floor
of
is
us?
yours.
You know,
Anticipation is killing us.
I brought it up in the hearing. You know, they brought up a specifically in the bill as scallops they were trying to address.
Right.
And, you know, the bivalve, oyster could be under all three categories: bivalve, aquatic mollusk, or mollusk. But then when you get narrowed down into specifics, I know for sure that an aquatic mollusk includes oysters, clams, mussels, and scallops. And so my question in the hearing, if you recall, was why didn't you add aquatic mollusk and bivalves rather than just take out mollusk and put in bivalves only? That way we made sure we covered everything that especially what was being testified in the bill hearing.
That's a great question. So let's continue to have Delegate Ziegler and Delegate Terrasa ask any questions before we have DNR jump in. You're happy. You're on mute, dear.
I recall that Delegate Jacobs saying that in the hearing, but I wasn't sure I had understood him and just wanted to be sure I understood what he was saying.
Yeah, I missed this particular hearing. Delegate Terrasa.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and sorry for the confusion. I don't know if it makes a difference from the vote on the bill, but I missed part of what you said. Like, there are two types, and what was the first type you said?
Shellfish?
Yeah, there's two types of shellfish.
Crustaceans. A crustacean.
Okay, and so where is scallops fall? Like, what does scallops have to do with this?
I don't know.
I just Googled.
That's where we need
Right,
bivalve.
but I just Googled scallops, and I don't understand how they're different than clams and oysters and others. Like, I don't know enough about it.
I don't either.
Bivalves.
They're all bivalves.
Because they have two
shells.
Okay, that's what I thought. That's why I was trying to understand how scallops were different. Okay, maybe DNR has a.
All right, I'm going to let Delegate Ruth ask a question, then we'll go to DNR.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just trying to understand. So, Delegate Jacobs, I think you said aquatic, what was the thing you said? Aquatic
mollusks.
Mollusks. What are in aquatic mollusks that are not in bivalves?
Well, there may be some, there may be some of the same in both, but aquatic mollusk specifically is oysters, clams, mussels, and scallops. And then in the hearing, the secretary was specific to scallops in his testimony, and that's why I brought it up. I said, why wouldn't you add aquatic mollusk and bivalves rather than just take out mollusk and just put bivalve? And us being as comprehensive as we can be in Annapolis passing legislation, why wouldn't you cover all bases?
Thank you. So I guess I'd like to hear what Dylan has to say.
Dylan.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so taking a really quick step back, current law is very explicit, and it just says oysters and clams, and a variety of things about both of those. The original bill that we submitted came in, and it was just live mollusk and molluscan shells. And then in the Senate, the Bay Foundation offered an amendment that the Senate took to limit that to the bivalve subcategory of mollusks. So that's just kind of where we're at. I think to answer the other original question, like mollusks is a much larger category. And as you said, Madam Chair, bivalves is a subcategory of that. Delegate Jake, I mean, the department is kind of indifferent on whatever the committee wants to do. As Delegate Jacobs said, the primary intent here is because we've seen a rebound of the bay scallop. We want to make sure that that's encompassed in the statute. And
I'm sorry.
She's gonna try to vote some of these out.
Rachel, can you mute yourself, Rachel? Thank you. Sorry, go ahead, Dylan.
And the primary intent here is to make sure bay scallops are included, because we've seen a rebound of those species, but we didn't want to just add bay scallops to the list and have to come back again because we're seeing the bay shift and we might see a return of different species. Delegate Jacobs, to your point, I think the department would be fine with aquatic molluscan species. The only thing I would flag is, that would include species that we would maybe never want to use under the statute, like a freshwater snail or something.
Well, snails, now I beg your pardon there. Snails are a mollusk. They're not aquatic mollusk. A mollusk is a soft-bodied invertebrate.
Yeah.
Are you putting?
And they are under, I mean, you have snails, octopus, oysters, squid. I mean, all of those are underneath a mollusk, but that's a different creature. An aquatic mollusk has a shell.
So are you suggesting to put and? I thought you meant or. Okay, so it has to be a qualifier for both of those?
Well, it could be and or. That way we got it covered, is my whole point. Because the secretary specifically brought up scallops, as you're bringing up now with the bay scallops, and I'm glad to see it. That's wonderful. But, hell, we get into the weeds on all kind of amendments and legislation in Annapolis. I just want to make sure that we're covering all bases, because bivalves may be too restrictive. That's all I'm saying.
And the department would be fine with.
But it sounds like you want to restrict it, but go ahead, Delegate Allen. I'll come back to that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, I guess this is for Dylan or Delegate Jacobs at this point, but what do you, again, for Delegate Jacobs, what are you worried is not covered by bivalves then? What is not covered under bivalves that you think we should include? That's what I'm trying to understand.
Well, what I'm trying to say is specifically scallops are under aquatic mollusk. And they're
the bivalves too, though.
Well, they may be a little more hairy. That's all I'm saying.
Wait, they're not bivalves?
Well, they may or may not be, but they are specifically an aquatic mollusk for sure. And that's all I'm saying is if we're arguing over and or with bivalves, and if you add bivalves and or aquatic mollusk, you have the whole thing covered. If you just go with mollusk, that's a whole different creature. So
Okay.
That's why I said that.
Well, I appreciate that, but here's what I'm reading, and then I'll let uh, Dylan to jump back in. You have mollusk, which are up here. And then under mollusk, whether you want to call them an aquatic mollusk or not, you have gastropods, bivalves. They have different, they have like another 5 categories of specific mollusk. And it sounds like to me, this is being restrictive in that you don't want snails and slugs. You do want to specifically talk about bivalves. I mean, I think the department, with all due respect to Dylan, can't say we can do what we want to do, because we will do what we want to do. But if it doesn't meet the intent of what the department was looking to put this bill in for, then we failed. So it sounds like you do want to be restrictive and talk about bivalves, which is one of many groups of a mollusk. See, no.
You asking me?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
And it's the point of this bill was to ensure, I think to Delegate Jacobs' point a little bit, is that you want to be sure that scallops are added because they are a bivalve mollusk.
Yes. And instead of, and we changed it from the specific list of species in current statute to something broader. And the original introduction of the bill was just mollusks, the much larger category. And then it was amended down to a more narrow category of bivalves, which from our interpretation is that the bay scallops that we're referring to are bivalves. So this would work for what we're trying to do. And it would be expansive. It would be as expansive as needed in the future if there are these specific types of bivalves that come back in the future.
Those clams,
yeah,
whatever.
Yeah. And we also have Sarah Whitman on the line if she wanted to add anything.
Well, let me go to let's go back to the team, Delegate Tarasa, who's holding her head like everybody else.
I just feel like on a Friday before Easter, I fell into a aquatic biology class I didn't know I was registered for. But what I understood Delegate Jacobs to say is that it wasn't entirely clear if scallops, which it sounds like everybody means to include, are always counted as bivalves, although that doesn't make a lot of sense to me just from my new limited my limited show of what like bivalve means. But if it's unclear whether scallops are included, couldn't we just say bivalves including scallops?
It sounds redundant to me, personally.
I mean, it sounds redundant to me too, but I'm just listening.
Bivalve was a bivalve.
Well, I didn't know if it was clear whether scallops were bivalves, and it sounded like Delegate Jacobs, who I'm positive has more knowledge of this
than all of us, yes.
Topic. Well, certainly than I do. But if he said it's unclear whether or not scallop, am I wrong, Delegate Jacobs? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be asking him directly, but
you can ask him directly.
No, listen.
Is that what you're saying? It's not clear whether they're always counted as bivalves?
I just suggested in the hearing when they talked about, if you read what the bill was talking about, live oysters, oyster shells, hard shell clams, soft shell clams, and then it wanted to add bivalves. But again, the secretary was talking specifically about scallops. And
right,
I said, well, for sure, aquatic mollusk includes scallops because it's oysters, clams, mussels, scallops. That's pretty much what the bill is talking about. That's why I brought that up. You know, if the subcommittees and everybody and DNR is happy with bivalves, so be it. I don't care. But you know, if we want to be specific, and usually we are with legislation, I just want to make sure that we got it covered. My question in the hearing was, why don't we add bivalves and aquatic mollusk, and that way we have it covered. Period.
And Madam Chair, my understanding was because we want to keep it narrow. And so my only question would be, from my perspective, is that do we know if we say bivalves that scallops are definitely included? And I see Dylan saying, yeah, so I'm happy with that, but now I'll be quiet on
Sarah's on the line, correct?
Yeah, Sarah is here.
Okay, can Sarah speak to these biological terms so we get it right?
Biology is not my background, but our staff, who are biologists, did when they looked at the bivalve change, they had no issues and they said, yes, scallop's a bivalve, so that would be fine to go down to that subcategory of mollusk.
Okay. Delegate Ruth had her hand up.
That's okay. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Because even as I look up, quote unquote, aquatic mollusk, it still gives me the same, actually 47 different types of subcategories, which again include the valvia or the bivalve, and it says that they're comprised of clams, mussels, oysters, and scallops. They have 2 shells, again, the valves. So Delegate Allen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, just in the interest of
Time.
making sure, this conforms with the Senate version and we don't get bogged down in language in the final week of session, I'm going to move that we move the bill as we received it from the Senate.
Just with all due respect, I don't think there's no cross file to this bill, correct? This is the bill essentially.
It is.
Yes.
There is no cross file, correct?
There's no cross file.
I just mean if we amend the Senate version, then it has to.
Yeah, that's true.
Can I second that?
You can.
Second.
Is there any further discussion?
So what is
Delgado.
the amendment? Is it?
I can't hear you, sir.
Aquatic mollusk?
Say it again. I can't hear you, sir.
Is this adding the aquatic mollusk to the?
No, because it is the assumption that a bivalve is essentially a form of a mollusk or an aquatic mollusk.
All right, well, I wanted to add Delegate Jacobs's language to it myself before we move it forward.
Well, that's why we're having discussion, because we're still on moving this bill. But again, I hear what Delegate Jacob is saying, but it seems redundant. If a bivalve is a mollusk, and if we amend it, then we have to send this back. Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I also was searching a little bit, and it's not entirely clear to me what aquatic, I mean, not disbelieving Delegate Jacobs, but just I want to make sure that it's clear enough that if we use the term in the bill, aquatic mollusk, that's clear what it is. And it's not entirely clear to me that that's clear enough from the limited research that I did. So I think, again, in the interest of it being a week before signing die, just over a week, that I think it would probably be best to move forward with the definition that DNR's biologists have approved, but I'm happy either way.
Dylan.
Yeah, just not to, I think the policy, and again, DNR is kind of indifferent because both of these definitions would include, in our interpretation, would include the bay scallop. But if I can take some liberty, the policy question that Delegate Jacobs is proposing to you all is whether or not to include aquatic mollusks as with bivalves. If that is the policy choice of this subcommittee, then there would be a larger cohort of species that are included in the statute, because aquatic mollusks include things such as snails, and I cannot think of any other, but that's the policy question. DNR is comfortable with either of those because we're really trying to just target the bay scallop, but either works for us. So I just wanted to provide that context.
And then, unfortunately, I'm going to have to go back to the other question I think Delegate Allen was asking is essentially what is not covered. But I guess to your point, what would be covered, that we would then have to go back and amend this bill because you don't want it covered under being so broad. right? Nobody wants to come back and have to then narrow this terminology, because all of a sudden everybody wants to be, you know, the American escargot, and we're eating up all the snails, right? Like what's so we want to do the correct policy. If the goal here is that you're trying to ensure that scallop are included, it seems like to me, given on my couch surfing this weekend and what we've come up here with today and hearing discussion, it sounds like bivalve may be it. I do potentially uh thinking more about it. I can't even believe we're still talking about this. If more of the scientific name as it relates to the overarching name and then bivalve needs to be added. But we have moved and seconded this.
Well, you know, I just wanted to make sure that the committee and the subcommittee was educated on these facts, you know.
Well, Delegate Jacobs, the fact that we've taken a very long time on a page-and-a-half bill means we respect you. This is why we've taken this time to look into this.
I'm just like Dragnet, just the facts, you know.
Hey. Well, in that case, all in favor of SB 303 signify by saying aye.
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 Any objections? Any last words on a mollusk, a bivalve, an aquatic mollusk, a snail?
Anyone want to
Okay.
go out for seafood?
Yeah. I am getting a little hungry, although I just say, all right.
That's
Moved
next year's
favorably. Thank
bill.
you for the discussion, and I thank you for us indulging our ranking member, because it is important. SB 808.
Yeah, that's one's mine. So Senate Bill 808 is relating to anaerobic digestion technology projects. I guess there's two components of the bill. One, the Department of Agriculture must coordinate with MEA, MDE, Commerce, the College of Ag and Natural Resources, electric companies, farmers, and industry to ensure anaerobic digestion technology projects are not unduly delayed. And the second, the Department of Ag, in coordination with MEA, MDE, and Commerce, must establish guidance for farmers regarding the development and implementation of anaerobic digestion technology.
Thank you. And many of you had questions, and I was hoping BioDev would be on the call, but they kind of shook me down. I told them I personally did not have any issues with them, and I told them they needed to shake down the folks who had questions in committee, which I know they did. I know they talked to Delegate Terrasa and Delegate Ruth about this, and I'm not sure. I think Delegate Ziegler might have a question or two. But the only thing that has come up, Kristen, is this thing about being delayed. There's an assumption that somehow this guidance bill somehow attempts to kind of curtail permitting. And as I understand it, as I've questioned it to death and asked questions and done my research, it does not. And apparently some of the issue is that local jurisdictions are a little, and this is why the guidance is important. They're, I think, unsure about the permitting process as it relates to them and I guess the state or these other entities. And so the delay comes in, I think, to local jurisdictions and not necessarily the state. But I don't know in this context what unduly delayed really means for this bill and potentially why we even need it. So that's a question for the committee, but let me go to Delegate Ruth and Delegate Terrasa, and we'll go back to Kristen.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. And I see that Rachel Jones is on, and I wonder if she has any insight into whether and how projects might be delayed, what farmers might be experiencing in trying to get these projects going.
Sure, Delegate Ruth. Thank you for the question. Well, what I will say is the sponsor didn't necessarily discuss it with us in advance, so we don't know the full depth of the delays that some farmers may be currently experiencing. What we do know is that the anaerobic digestion facilities that the secretary and some of us as staff have had an opportunity to tour and to see, obviously they create a renewable energy source. When you're talking about doing it on a small scale, there are just certain things that a lot of farmers are trying to figure out on their own. And so we see the benefit of this bill being that it would provide a more streamlined resource for farmers, but I can't give you specific, unfortunately, challenges that or delays that farmers might be experiencing because we don't quite have that information, but we do see the benefit of the bill.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Madam Chair. May I?
Yes, please.
Thank you. And you know, I definitely see the part B is I think really important to make sure that that guidance is there for farmers. And I can understand, you know, trying to simplify things. My concern is just saying that all these different entities work together to make sure projects are not unduly delayed, that's kind of vague in terms of what that means. And, you know, my thought had been to somehow clarify that to make sure, even though I understand what the chair is saying, that the intent is not to remove permitting steps, but I just want to make sure that if we're making sure projects are not delayed, that's clear enough that we're not, that all the permitting still has to be done for the environment and everything. Thank you.
You're welcome. Delegate Tarasa.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, I have a big problem with the unduly delayed line. And it seems to me that if you want these folks to coordinate, I don't have as much of a problem with that piece. Maybe that's a good idea, but it should be so these things are adequately, for lack of a better word in my sleepiness, like supervised or adequately, there have adequate oversight. I don't know. I'm not sure I understand why that's in the same bill. Like, I think the guidance is fine. But I do still have concerns with that. And I thought either the sponsor or the company were going to try to do something with that, but I don't see that there's anything they did.
What do you mean do something with it?
Well, I don't know if they were going to try to put an amendment or ask for an amendment or.
I mean,
like,
it's up to the committee, you know, it's up to the committee. Delegate Jacobs. I'm sorry, Delegate Tarasa, are you done?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure how to go about it this moment, amending the bill that, I mean,
I think
I'm
I'm getting some more insight. We've got more people on the call that can
okay,
address
thanks.
essentially, but I want to talk to members before we go to them. Delegate
Okay,
Jacobs.
thank you.
All right, so I see that Stephanie Lansing's on the call, and perhaps she can give us some insight into what that.
She can, but I wanted to talk to the members first for questions and then go to Stephanie. Delegate Jacobs, you didn't have any other questions other than that?
No, I think that we need to move forward with this. It's you know, this is a good technology and it's much needed. You know, as you notice when we visited Jessup and the amount of product that's brought in there every day, I just can't imagine putting that in landfills that this wouldn't be a better mousetrap, so to speak. So
yeah, thank you for that, Delegate Jacobs. Delegate Stein.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I generally support this bill, and one thing that I think is noteworthy is that I guess there was a recently released report. It's a long report name, but it's from University of Maryland School of Agriculture, which makes a number of recommendations about ag working, or the ag department working more closely with these other agencies, and that seems to be a key part of this bill. So anyway, so in general, I support it, and things could move the process of developing more capacity forward.
Yeah, no, I agree, Mr. Pro Tem. And I as the more I'm listening to this, it seems like the unduly delayed means going to these entities that have to work together on behalf of those potentially interested in working this technology, meaning like figure it out together and coordinate it without delaying somebody who wants to get into this technology. So I'm thinking maybe that's what the unduly delayed means, not necessarily anything else. But I do want to go to, I'm sorry, Mr. Pro Tem, are you finished? I want to, yes, okay. Stephanie Lansing, you're here. And thank you for being here and emailing earlier today.
So I'm Stephanie Lansing from the University of Maryland, and I was the primary author of that very long report. And Madam Chairman, I think you're exactly right in the sense that the unduly delayed is the, someone will go to a county government and they'll say, I think you need to go to MDE, and MDE will say, no, I think you need to go to MDA, and MDA will be like, no, I think you need to. And so that's the delay. It's just, we need clear guidance on exactly, if you are a small farmer doing a digestion system, this is where you go, this is the steps you take, this is exactly what needs to happen. And we just don't have that guidance for farmers to follow. So it's merely laying out the steps. And again, some of the people went to Kilby Farm, which digests DAF, which, you know, we've had bills about food waste residuals. So it takes away the odor from that, as well as food waste and dairy manure. And it took them almost 3 years to get paid for the renewable electricity that they put on the grid. And a lot of that was because of permit. They were unclear on how they were needed to do things. So it's not like anyone would do it for them, but it would just provide clear guidance on this is when this needs to be filed. This is what you need to do. So it's more about, in our report said, there just needs to be clarity for people interested in this technology on the steps that they need to take themselves to obtain the proper permits and the proper oversight to safely operate a digestion system.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much, Stephanie. Going back to Pro Tem Stein.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do I still have my hand up?
Oh, yeah, you do. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. My fault.
That's okay. Delegate Otto.
Madam Chairman, thank you. I moved the bill favorable.
Well, thank you. We will hold that first, and then we'll go to, before we gasp for a second, and see if Delegate Ruth and Delegate Terrasas have their hands up for other questions or comments.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I really want to move forward with this bill. And I realize we're very close to sine die, but I just wondered if it would be possible to hold it for me to try to work on an amendment for our next meeting.
I don't know when we're going to meet again. And so I would say, if you can speak to the group here so we can get an idea, because we do have time. It's not 3 o'clock yet. And this is the last bill for the session here. What do you feel like you need to clarify?
So instead of, it sounds to me like the problem is that all of these entities need to coordinate to make sure the process is clear and streamlined. And B gets to that a lot, but I can understand that beyond the guidance that the entities themselves need to make sure that they have coordination among themselves as to what needs to be done when, so that the projects are streamlined. And so I mean I'm just thinking something along the lines of that all these entities should coordinate. I don't want to read the whole list, but to ensure that guidance, and this is why I was asked to hold it, because I sort of had the idea.
I feel like I feel like in better understanding this does actually do that, but I'm willing to have more discussion on it. And we do have time. That is not unduly delayed, because we're asking them to work together so that, to some of Stephanie's point, that, you know, folks are not like running around trying to find out who does what when, that somehow these folks are going to come together to create a pathway, right? Where no matter where they go, you know that you're going to get the right information. If I go to my local zoning board, they know that they have to contact this person, and that person to get me to the pathway. If I happen to go to ag, they know per my county, they have to go to ag without being prescriptive. That's their job to figure out. But I know the unduly delayed is really troublesome to some folks. Delegate Tarasa.
Yeah, I am very uncomfortable with that. I mean, I'm not even sure. Like, it seems to me that A is really in, if it's not just to speed up the projects, which I hope it isn't. I mean, I don't think we need to speed up projects that are, unless they're good projects and we've already determined that and gone through a process. But if it's just about getting to a process, it seems to me that you don't even need to ensure anaerobic digestion technology projects are not unduly delayed. They should coordinate with each other and with, I guess, the MDA. Well, I mean, because the second thing is that they should coordinate to establish guidance. Why aren't all these folks coordinating to establish guidance that will be put forth by MDA? And I'm trying to read the second one really quickly.
It is.
Right, but
Department of
I
Agriculture
don't know
has
why
to
A is
approve it.
necessary. A could be incorporated into B. Like, it doesn't seem like, why do we need something that says that makes sure they're not unduly delayed?
Well, I'm going to go to Delegate Jacobs and back to Stephanie, I believe this bill was crafted per the report that came out. So, I'm sorry, I'm not, hold on, let me see if Delegate Tarasa is finished. I don't want to cut her off.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'm uncomfortable with the way that is, and I
Sure.
was thinking we were going to hear some language.
Okay.
You know, I talked to Mr. Greenfield. I thought he was going to put forth some language, but
I think from what I understand, if unduly was just removed and just it was not delayed, I think they were fine with something like that.
well, I don't think it should be that either. Like, they should be coordinating just to make sure they're not delayed. Like, unduly is probably better. Unduly delayed is probably better than just delayed. I think that piece is a problem because it says, like, what we should be doing is making a smoother process that makes sure that there's adequate guardrails and there's, you know, a smoother process.
Yeah, but the guardrails, just to slightly push back, the guardrails are already there because there is a permitting process. So this doesn't skirt a permitting process.
Right, but
I do want to be clear about that.
Well, thanks, Madam Chair. No, I appreciate that. But whenever I see something that says sort of make sure they're not delayed or unduly delayed, I'm concerned that is, like, I'm not sure why that's needed unless you think they're being unduly delayed.
I think that's the point that was made, is that, and maybe the word unduly again is wrong based on the fact that I think people just don't know where to go, which are not two of the same things. Delegate Jacobs.
Well, personally, Madam Chair, I think this bill is clear. It's a short bill. It's pretty clear in its intent. And I think we're starting to get into the bivalve and aquatic mollusk conversation right at this point. And, you know, I think I will second the motion.
Thank you, Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just really quick tried to put something together. And, you know, I think thinking about it, my concern is it's that when it's saying projects are not unduly delayed, it sounds like it's trying to expedite the projects themselves when what we need to make sure is the process. And so what I just quickly threw together says the department shall coordinate blah, 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 farmers and industry to develop a process for better coordination to streamline permitting anaerobic digestion technology projects while ensuring all permitting steps are completed.
Well, I guess I would question that because it sounds like there's already a permitting process, and it's not the permitting process. It's the fact that, for instance, both MDE and Agriculture, Department of Ag, manage food waste to a degree. You know, based on the permit and where it comes from, they each have a different hand in it. So it doesn't sound like there's a permit issue. And maybe Stephanie, can you just step back in and help us with this part? Because I know you helped kind of craft this, because we are in the mollusk and the bivalve conversation right now. But this is important because this unduly delayed comes up, and the assumption is that you're trying to push along a project and push through permitting. I see it a little differently now that I understand, but I do somewhat question unduly delayed. So
Yeah, I think, you know, the words we were hearing is, you know, projects are appropriately coordinated. So something is coordinated appropriately because the process, there is a process in place. It's just the coordination, at least what we heard from, you know, we did hundreds of surveys and talked and did lots of interviews for this report. And we just need the projects are appropriately coordinated within those divisions. Is exactly as you said. If it's food waste, who are we supposed to go to? And who's supposed to, you know, what are the steps? So it's really an appropriate coordination so that they're not delayed because that coordination isn't happening in an appropriate manner.
So what I'm hearing you say is it could just say end industry to ensure anaerobic digestion technology projects are appropriately coordinated.
Yeah, I mean that to me I think is the spirit of what the report said.
And how does Delegate Tarassa?
Madam Chair, I like that much better.
Okay. So
I'm good with that as well. Thank you, Madam
okay,
Chair.
so we did have a motion on the floor first, moved and seconded to move the bill as is. At this point, I guess we would have to have someone withdraw their motion. And if folks are comfortable with adding this amendment to remove not unduly delayed, the motion would need to be withdrawn and the amendment would need to be put forward.
I'll remove my second.
Thank you. Their
Well,
motion
I
on the
move the
amendment.
bill and we can offer the amendment on the full committee. I mean, I'm comfortable with what you're saying too. I mean,
That is true too.
fine.
That is absolutely true too. Okay. Delegate Ruth.
But Madam Chair, I would just be more comfortable if we resolve it now and not go to full committee with it unresolved.
Well, he didn't say it was unresolved. What he said is that since we've already moved and seconded to bill, we can just add we're already agreeing on the amendment. We can amend it in full. We can also bring the amendment in full committee if people are comfortable with that. But again,
then I will be
already been the motion has already been removed. So we are at the stage where we don't have a bill that has been moved. So is there a motion to put the amendment onto the Senate bill?
Move the
I
amendment.
moved the bill with the amendment.
We have to adopt the amendment first.
All right.
Move the
Move the
amendment.
amendment.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor of the amendment to change unduly delayed to appropriately coordinated, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposition? Motion to move the bill as amended.
Move the
So
bill, Madam
moved,
Chair.
Madam Chair.
Second.
Thank you so much. Any other discussions? Would anyone like
I
to
do.
amend the bill to add a scallop?
I was wondering if we should add aquatic mollusk to the
Yeah,
bill.
I was going to check in with you about that as well.
Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome. All in favor of the bill as amended, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposition? Thank you all for your wonderful work and deep dive into page and a half bills. Thank
No
you.
pun intended.
None at all. Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to thank everyone for your patience and for working with us.
Well, we are a team. There's no us as in me or you. This is us. This is what we do in this subcommittee. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second, happy Passover for those who are about to start and happy Good Friday and Easter to the rest of you.